Okay, so we're kind of getting into the art and reality section of the book. So there's 3 different ways to categorize art. The 3 different categories of art are representational art, non-representational art, and abstract art. So let's move on. Let's just go right into representational art. It depicts the appearance of things. It's pretty straightforward. You know, if you pick a subject such as a can, you represent the can in a very, relatively realistic and recognizable way. That is representational art. Figurative art is a form of representational art, so it falls underneath the umbrella of representational art. But it's the human form is the primary subject. So that's its own little subcategory underneath representational art. And a subject is the object that is represented in a piece. So it's the object depicted in the art piece. So we're going to kind of take a look at representational art. So what is the subject of this piece? So it's depicting a pipe, so that is the subject. That's the main subject of this piece, and that's the only subject of this piece, really, besides the lettering below it. And we'll talk about this piece a little bit. It's by the Belgian painter René Magritte. I believe that's how you say it. And it's called The Treachery of Images. La Trahison des Images. I'm not quite sure how to say that in French or Belgian, but and it really is a commentary on the relationship between art and reality. So the subject of the painting appears to be a pipe, but written underneath it is "This is not a pipe" in French. So as a viewer, you may wonder, if this is not a pipe, what is it? So ask yourself that, try to answer it. Okay, I gave you a second. The answer is it's a painting. That's what it is. It's not really a pipe. And even in the title, The Treachery of Images, it kind of relates to and hints at the visual game that René Magritte is actually kind of playing with in this piece. So do you understand what the artist is trying to say? What do you think he's trying to say by, the juxtaposition of an ultra hyper-realistic painting of a pipe, and then that text underneath that says "This is not a pipe"? And I kind of feel like the artist is messing with me. And it's kind of a humorous piece almost. I think the artist is really trying to break down the relationship between art and reality. Do you believe what you see, or do you believe what you read? There's kind of a struggle going on here between that realistic image of the pipe and the very matter-of-fact message below it that says it's not a pipe. Obviously, it's not a pipe. This is a painting, right? So if you watch the video in the content area of week 1 on René Magritte, it really does help to explain a lot of his pieces and what he was trying to do with them. He really was making commentary on how imagery is deceptive, and it's really interesting. So if you have time, I suggest learning a little bit more about René Magritte and some of his work. Okay, I'm going to skip those 2 things. So the next thing we're going to talk about is abstract art. It's one of the categories, one of the 3 categories. The verb to abstract means to take form. It means to extract the essence of an object or idea. So abstracted works depict natural object in simplified, distorted, or exaggerated ways. And it may be an obvious, abstraction, or you might not be able to recognize what it originally was. It might look totally non-representational to you. And there's different degrees of abstraction. Sometimes it's very low level of abstraction, and then sometimes it can be very high. So it kind of exists on a scale, a little bit of a scale. And it's common in a lot of cultures. Also, abstracted art can have no reference to natural objects as well, but most of the time they do depict natural objects in a simplified, distorted, or exaggerated way. So this is kind of a famous series by Theo van Doesburg. It's Abstraction of a Cow series from 1917. And he started off with pencil on paper and then ends, I believe, with oil on canvas. But you can see how he took that cow and slowly started to morph it into this abstracted painting. And he's really trying to see how far he can abstract the cow but still capture the essence of the animal. So he used the cow as the jumping off point, and then he ended up with this series of colored rectangles. So if we only viewed the final painting here, we wouldn't know that this was an abstract piece because we wouldn't be able to realize that that's a cow necessarily. But it does supposedly represent the cow and somehow capture the essence of the cow, at least in Theo van Doesburg's mind. So this is kind of an interesting way of looking at abstraction. It really does lay it out for you. Non-representational art, non-objective or non-figurative art, presents visual forms with no specific references to anything outside of themselves. So really no, not representing anything at all. And we really experience non-representational art as just being boiled down to the basic building blocks of art. Color, line, shape, texture are really going to be the predominant characteristics of non-representational art. So one non-representational artist that is actually very famous is Carmen Herrera. This is Yellow and Black from 2010. And I do have a video in week 1 about Carmen Herrera, and I think she might be in her 80s or 90s. She's really old. I don't know if she's still alive actually at this point, but this is acrylic on canvas. It's a fairly large piece. It's 36 inches by 72. And if you watch that video, she's actually really interesting, and I really have a lot of respect for what she does. This looks really simple, but like you should see all the stuff that she makes is amazing. I mean, she just has a really large collection and she's been doing it for a long time. She has a lot of devotion to what she's doing, even though it's really simplified. So this was done in 2010 by Carmen Herrera. It's called Yellow and Black, super simple. And some might say that it hints at a lightning bolt, but it really is just an experiment of 2 strong colors next to each other, an experiment in line. So the lines used are diagonal, which is kind of creates a more dynamic piece when you use diagonal lines as opposed to just horizontal or static vertical and horizontal lines. So the fact that they're on the diagonal creates a lot more sense of movement, and it's a little bit edgier, I guess. So really just boil down to the basic elements of line and color here. No representation at all, even though some people think that it hints at a lightning bolt. So looking and seeing, we're going to talk about looking and seeing. Looking is really a habitual thing that we do every day in order to navigate our world, and it's really mechanical and goal-oriented. Seeing is a more focused version of looking. In seeing, we look at our memories, our imaginations, and we look with our feelings. And hopefully by the end of this class, you get better at seeing art instead of just looking at it. You actually can see it and really relate it back to more meaning in your life. So here's an example of an artist that really was good at seeing. So do you know what this is? If you take a look at this, it's Edward Weston. It's a photograph, and he was really Edward Weston was really a master at seeing. He was able to see something extraordinary in this pepper that he photographed, and he used special techniques to really get it just right. He used a timed exposure for over 2 hours. So he set his camera up on a tripod for 2 hours and left the lens open over a period of 2 hours to kind of create that special glow that's created here in this piece. And he also lit the pepper in a very effective way that really shows off the form of the pepper. And what does this pepper remind you of? Can you think of, what you think this might remind you of? It's actually supposed to kind of represent embracing figures. So 2 figures embracing. So this photo that Weston created communicates a sense of wonder at the simple things around us. So he was able to look at this pepper and he was able to see the embracing figures. And it may also stimulate us to participate in the artist's prolonged act of seeing. So when we look at this, it really does invite us in to see it the way that Weston saw it. And like like seeing is a very deeply personal process. So no two people are going to see the same thing the same way. Because each of us is different and each of our life stories are different and our memories and our thoughts and our feelings are different. So confronted with this image of a pepper, you might evaluate it differently than Weston did. Some might simply see a pepper, and some might actually see it very much the way that Weston did. So kind of an interesting piece on really seeing. This photograph really proves that the artist was good at seeing. And it's a gelatin silver print from 1930. So continuing on, we're going to talk about form and content a little bit. So form refers to the total effect of the combined visual elements within a work. And content refers to the message or meaning of the art. So form, visual qualities, we're talking about materials, color, shape, line, the design, like all of the really solid things within the piece are form. Content is the message or the meaning of the art, and what the artist is trying to express to the viewer. Form and content are really inseparable. Content really defines the form. So first you start off with the meaning and then you create the form. And so the two are, and the form expresses the content, right? So they kind of relate back to each other in this way, and they're really inseparable in that way. So the best way to kind of try to understand form and content is to look at two pieces with the same subject. So here we have two pieces, the same subject, embracing figures, right? Kissing. So this is the same subject. We have two figures kissing, the kiss, but they differ greatly in form and content, right? So Auguste Rodin, the kiss, 1886, out of marble. It's almost life size, 5'11", basically lifestyle, like maybe a little bit over life size because they're actually sitting. So Rodin's figure on the left, they represent the Western ideals of masculine and feminine. And it's really the sensual side of love that's being captured here. And in contrast to this kind of more sensual approach, Brancusi, Constantine Brancusi, the kiss from 1916, it uses kind of the solid quality of the block to express really lasting love. So potentially an older couple that have been together for 50 years, this is his version of that love. And this might be more of young love, maybe. So, and in this piece, he used minimal cutting of the stone to illustrate the concept of two becoming one. So he's really using symbolism here with the way that he's cutting the stone, the way that he's using his medium. He's minimally cutting into it to really illustrate that they're one piece. And he also used geometric abstraction. So he's abstracted the figures. They don't look very realistic, unlike Rodin, who used the figures in a very realistic way. Brancusi uses geometric abstraction. And Brancusi's work expresses love of a solid, enduring nature. And Rodin's sculpture expresses the feelings of love, while Brancusi's expresses the idea of love a little bit more. So this is a really interesting way of contrasting the form. The form of this is more solid, it's more abstracted, it's geometric abstraction. This one is more realistic, more representational. But the content is a kiss, the subject is a kiss, but the content, this is more lasting love, and this is more youthful, sensual love. So iconography, this is another important piece, important thing to talk about, I guess. So, is the symbolic meanings of subjects and signs used to convey ideas important to particular cultures or regions? So, symbols, motifs,